I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Harwich Conservation Commission for November 17th, 2021. The attendance at these meetings is hybrid. It can be either in person or by electronically. If you do want to join electronically, the login information is available on the town website. You can also dial in using your phone. The number is 872-240-3412, and the access code 138073029. So with that, we are ready to begin. And I do apologize to everyone for the delay in starting tonight. We had some other business that we had to discuss, and it sort of held us up a little bit, but thank you for attending tonight. So the first item on the agenda is a determination of applicability for 5 Lynch Lane, map 65, parcel N5-5 for a proposed addition, deck and septic replacement. Proponent here?
Yes, good evening. Paul Shea with Independent Environmental, and I'm representing the applicant for 5 Lynch Lane. The applicant filed an RDA to do some proposed work on his existing house at the property. The proposed work is that he's proposing an addition to the site, to the existing house, and he's going to be building a new deck at the back of the house and a brand new Title V septic system. This particular property is within the 200-foot riverfront area for Swan Pond River. The proposed site alterations, the existing house that's out there is already in the 100-foot outer riparian zone of the riverfront area. There's an existing greenhouse on the site, which is actually half of it's inside the first 100 feet of the riverfront, and the other half is in the outer portion of the riverfront area, 100-foot zone. Along with the proposed alterations, we are proposing to do mitigation for all site alterations with the project, proposing 1,800 square feet of new native shrub plantings to be planted in the riverfront area. The majority of the new plantings primarily are going to be chokeberry, I believe it's chokeberry, sweet pepper bush, and low bush blueberry. The plantings, for the most part, are in the 100-foot outer riparian zone, but there is a section of the plantings where we're actually putting them in the 100-foot inner riparian zone with an area that's had some past clearing, and we're going to be replanting that area. I think it's a plus with the project that they're putting in a new Title V septic system. It should be noted that the proposed addition area that's going in is within an area of the, right part of the house is that it's already been altered in the past. So I talked with Amy about this before we submitted the application, and it was recommended that we file for a request for determination. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Amy, do you have any comments?
The proposal is for an 865 square foot addition within the outer riparian zone. It's about 175 feet away from this little creek that's Swan Pond River. I think it's also called Smelt Creek. The area, there's existing deck and hardscape there, or cleared area, kind of egress around the home where they want to put the addition. I actually had a chance to speak with the owner on site last week, Paul, and we both agreed, and I don't know if he talked to you about it, that instead of putting the mitigation to the, as you're looking at it, to the right side of the greenhouse as proposed, that if possible, it would be more beneficial environmentally to put it along the back side of the greenhouse, along the existing clearing, and extending out to the sides there. So basically to create a more contiguous buffer to the creek, which runs parallel to the back of the greenhouse. So I think, go ahead.
I think that would be fine. Yep.
So it would be the
So we'd
same.
be sliding over the proposed planting, so they're towards the river behind the greenhouse.
Yeah, and the length, because it's a narrower area back there, but it would extend farther out to the sides, you know, probably a couple rows thick, and a longer distance. But both he and I agreed that that might be a little bit better, even though what you proposed would certainly work as well. So, so I would recommend, 'cause that's an area that has been cleared and altered in the past. I would recommend approval of the project with a -2 determination because the work is actually in the riverfront area. I spoke with the owner about no chemicals or fertilizers be used in the riverfront area, and all roof runoff on the addition go into gutters, downspouts, and dry wells. Plantings be done the same or next growing season as start of work on the addition. And I'm forgetting something. I don't think it's anything substantive, so that's my recommendation.
Thank you, Amy. Mark, do you have any questions, comments?
I have no questions. Seems very straightforward, and I agree with Amy's recommendation.
Thank you. John? Fred?
I agree with Amy's recommendation.
Alan? We have no comments either, so may we have a motion on this application for request for determination of applicability?
I would move for approval of the RDA for 5 Lynch Lane with a -2 determination.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is a request for determination of applicability for 6 Aurora Drive, map 15, parcel U2-2 for proposed addition and septic relocation.
Good evening, Dan Croto from Moran Engineering. I'm here for the Sullivans on their proposal to expand a bedroom with an office nook because they're looking at spending more time at their Cape House. So it's just a 9x17 first floor addition. It's in an area of existing lawn and a planting bed that's now existing non-native plants. It's in a it's beyond the 100-foot BVW setback, but it's within the 100-foot to the top of coastal bank as measured from the floodplain. This is an area where the floodplain is in the lawn, so the coastal bank is a manicured lawn. But, so the setback is to that, it's not to the BVW. So adding the actual addition is just, it's not taking down any native plants or anything. Mitigation requirements still apply, I'm sure, so the idea was to do 2 times that mitigation in native plantings, and then the current proposal is as shown on the plan, the native plant, keeping all the disturbance around the addition. The addition goes in, the native planting bed goes around the addition. Having said that, some contact with Amy, and I know how the commission has ruled in the past, they like to attach native planting beds to existing areas of native plants. This, if that is the case, and again, the current proposal would be the owner's wishes, is just to keep the disturbance in one area, nothing native being disturbed, but to come back and put native plantings in that same area around the addition. The owner would be open to going across to the other side of the lawn, where there's a good piece of native plants that are also within the buffer, so they would be regulated. So what's there couldn't be touched. That would be more of an upland area, but certainly supports upland species, and it's the same habitat where the addition's going. They'd rather not go down below due to the large amount of mitigation they already need to do down below, removing that. They are aware that the no chemicals requirement applies to their lawn. So with that, I'll ask for comments on the proposal.
Thank you. Amy?
As Dan stated, this is a pretty small addition, about 9 by 17, roughly 90-ish feet away from the resource area. The real question is where the mitigation goes, and I did bring up the question of that I thought that doing a planting bed of native plantings around the addition wouldn't count as mitigation, would have the tendency to be more of a formal planting bed, even though it's with native species. You know, they have planting beds all around their house now, so native species are great, but if it was gonna be, you know, mulched or taken care of and basically maintained, the whole idea of a mitigation planting area is to plant it, water it a little bit, and let it go and naturalize, and I don't know if plantings around a house, if they would be maintained in any way. So my recommendation is still to add on to the mitigation area closer to the edge of marsh. It is only 306 square feet required. There is still an extensive amount of lawn area that would be there. The area that Dan was talking about as an alternative, if you look on your plan, it says edge of lawn right here. So this is all treed area here, so what they could do is add on to the edge, I believe, there. I do believe that's better than up by the house. However, it's still not contiguous with the resource area. And so I would recommend approval, but I would strongly recommend that they add the 306 square feet to the existing required mitigation that they already have to do closer to the marsh.
Okay.
And that would be an approval, if we can agree on that, that would be an approval with a -3 determination.
Okay, thank you. Mark, do you have any comments on this?
I do not.
Okay. John?
Yeah, well, I'd like to point out that the chemical restriction isn't just about the lawn, it's everything within the 100-foot buffer. There are a lot of ornamental beds, foundation plantings all around that house, which, when we issue the order for no chemicals or fertilizers, that applies to everything, not just the grass. And I guess I'm not sure what the owners would be planning to do up around the addition, presumably just putting native grass seed there. Well, something has to go there around the, I mean, if.
There was a submittal of what the current proposal was.
Well, I know, in the current proposal, that's native plantings. My question is, just to complete the question, I favor moving, as Amy suggests, the mitigation plantings down along the bank with the rest of it. But even if it's moved over to the edge of lawn area, then my question is, what happens to that area that is now designated as getting the native plantings?
I guess they would, I mean, my thinking was they would have the ability to maintain bring back what's there now, which would be lawn and ornamental plants, because that would be that would match what's there now, and then they would have right now they're doing an addition over what's basically heavily landscaped area. So they're not, I don't think they should be double penalized, or double
Okay,
mitigated.
that's fine, but you've got to plant something there, and my point applies there specifically. What is there now is not necessarily appropriate for a condition where you're not applying any chemicals or fertilizers. Hydrangeas and roses are most of what's around the house. Normally, ornamental plantings like that get a lot of fertilizer. Both hydrangeas and roses typically get treated, and for them to be kept looking like looking like they should, as people expect when they plant that, you won't be able to treat them that way anymore under this. So my question is, then what happens to that area? If you're replanting, I would suggest you can't replant roses or hydrangeas there, because they will have to be fed, and we're restricting that.
Got it, so it'd be I guess it would be the same as any time you run into an addition or a new house within that 100-foot setback, what's typically required right around the building.
Yeah,
You know,
we
I mean,
usually
you must run into
say-
this all the time.
We usually say it has to be reseeded with a native grass seed mix. Any area that's destabilized is to be restabilized with a seed mix, not turf or sod. So, I hear what you're saying. I don't know if we can prohibit them from putting the hydrangeas and roses or whatever in, because they're not on the unprohibited type of invasive list, but we would encourage them to choose ornamental plantings that would not require such thing, because we're not allowing fertilizers.
Well, then, in that case, I don't favor asking them to move them down there, because if they plant stuff that normally requires treatment, I don't see how we're gonna enforce them not treating them. I would say that in the order of conditions for this, that it be made very clear that there should be no chemicals or fertilizer applied anywhere within the 100-foot buffer. That's what I have to say.
They
Thank you.
would get that, and I think that, again, going with that, that maintaining that, putting the natives there, and then just doing all the disturbance in that one area is what they would like to do. If they are open to plantings that maybe, yeah, the native, replanting the disturbed area with native grasses, and then adding, again, ideally adding it straight across to the lawn to that other area, which is a habitat and is closer to the type of habitat, if this was native, they were disturbing. You know, it'd be that same upper bank habitat of where this addition is going. Again, it's in the setback to that coastal bank, but not into that BVW setback. So, like, either way, they're fine with keeping it as is or going across. I probably would have to discuss more with them about going down below.
Sorry, Brad, all set?
Nothing further.
Okay. Jim?
No additional comment.
No? A couple of questions. So, on the plan, Dan, where are the delineations for the resource areas? I see you have the 100 feet from the BV wetland. Are these two dotted lines here, the 50 and the
The
100?
large, the heavy dashed lines
Yeah.
would be the 50 feet from coastal bank and the 100 feet from coastal bank.
Okay, so this is within the 100 then,
This
with the
is
50
within
to
the
100?
And the other part of this that I didn't bring up was that septic tank would be moved out, completely out of the coastal bank setback as a requirement to be 10 feet from the addition, but also it would move it out of the setback. That's the only change to septic system, would be sliding the tank over 6 feet.
Oh, okay, yeah, just the tank and not the, yeah, you're not changing the location of the field.
No.
No, okay. So I noticed, as John was saying, that the area where the proposed addition is currently flower beds and all, right? This
Correct.
landscape area, which I don't necessarily view as being mitigation anyhow. I mean, there's plantings in there, there's no structure in that area. So I agree with John that I think moving it down, adding it on to the 1,200 square feet of mitigation plantings that are along the edge of the BBW is probably more appropriate from my perspective as well.
It's actually 1,800, because it's the 1,200 plus the 6, but in that general area.
I'm looking, there's an existing approved 1,200 square foot mitigation plantings that's shaded, and
Yeah.
then just north of that is another 100 square feet, right?
And west of that, there's a note that says existing 600 square feet.
Oh, I see, yes, I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
there's
right.
like- It's a
So 18.
conglomeration.
Yeah, okay.
there.
So you would add it west of the, or add it on to the 1,800 that's already there, west of the existing or the proposed mitigation plantings by the coastal bank.
One option is 50% down and 50% around the addition. So that way it would keep the addition in, I think it would keep the, assure the addition has plants that wouldn't even, the people wouldn't even want to put, or wouldn't need fertilizer. Like putting the native plants around the native grass and native plants around the disturbed area, and then the size of the addition, 150 square feet, adding that down below. How about that for an option?
Was he intending to plant around the addition anyhow?
He would have to bring back plants, but
Yeah.
the non-natives he's pulling away, I would believe he could bring back if that's not gonna be part of his mitigation, being
Right.
the 100.
So he'd
you
put
know,
ornamentals
We're meeting
in
the
there.
full mitigation.
Yeah.
306.
Yeah, I guess I'm more in
But if he
favor of
was
just,
gonna bring 5 feet around the addition and stuff with native plants and then put the rest down below, how does 50/50 work?
I think that's a good compromise.
I'm good
'Cause the
with that,
plants
John.
up,
50/50, yeah.
I think the plants up around that way you could guarantee that the plants up around the immediate foundation of the new structure would be at least native drought tolerant, not need anything, and then you still get a little bit down below too. So I think that's a good compromise.
okay. Good. If there are no other comments, John, do you have something else?
I was gonna make a motion, but I'll wait.
Well, I was
See
gonna
whether
ask
there's-
for, it. Feel free.
Okay, I move that we approve the RDA for 6 Flora Drive with a -3 determination and with the condition that of the 306 square feet of mitigation, 153 of that be around the new addition, and the other 153 be attached to the mitigation at the southeast corner of the property. And it also that the standard language for no fertilizers, insecticides, or herbicides be included in the order of conditions with the specific language that applies to all plantings on the property within the 100-foot buffer.
Okay, thank you. Can we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Chair, there are comments from the audience, if we could take them at this.
Please.
And folks, I'm sorry, we don't have a mic up there, so you're more than welcome to grab this from me. If you would just state your name.
Sure. Good evening. I'm Ann Tucker, and I'm in a butter to the property. I'm on 3 Colonial Way. My question is about the mitigation area because it relates to what you've already approved for the new lot. So you're adding to that. And there's been, since the last storm and since your last review of the property, a loss of trees, significant loss of trees, and I would ask that you make a visit to see what's happened in this area since it's all contiguous, as you make your ruling on what's in and what's out.
Are the trees you're talking about lost? So here's the pool, here's the garage, the area.
It's in the new area,
new
because
one.
you allowed it the
Yep.
swap, and as you're talking about mitigation, it's in part of this swap, if I understand it correctly. So there's more things going on in this area, and just as you disturb it more, I just would ask that you look at it and be fully informed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can look at that at Tomboro.
Oh,
My name's Mary Larkin. I'm at 9 Colonial Way, which is directly across from Mr. Sullivan's pool area, across the marsh. And I too would like to put in that request, because I personally did go to see Mr. Sullivan before the first round of approvals. And he indicated to me that, in fact, it was gonna be a rather small-size house that was going up, as well as I walked the property with him and I saw all the various pink tied-off trees. And what I see there now is nothing compared to what he described. So I would like to also put in the request that you come out and look at it. Thank you.
so the trees that you're talking about, are they on the Sullivan property itself?
Well, there are two pieces of property, and in your rulings, you've been swapping between the two in terms of mitigation, that's why we're here tonight. And now the trees that were there seem to all of a sudden be missing, and so I think it's pertinent to this discussion.
It's in common ownership. 2 and 6 Barora are owned by the Sullivan family. I will make a site visit out there.
Okay, all
But
right.
I think all the trees they're speaking of are on 2, which is there.
Yeah,
All right,
But you're mitigating
lot.
you're swapping between the two, even on this.
not for not for this project. I'll mitigate, activities on number 6 and mitigations on number 6.
and the marked trees on 2, are those intended to come down, do we know?
There was, some that were marked to come down, some were kind of edge of disturbed area. I'll have to go back and look.
Okay, all right, we'll take a look and
Anything,
check it out.
anything outside the limit of work that may have been touched, or that shouldn't have been, we'll take that into account.
Okay, good, well, thank you for your comments. Thank you. So we have a motion on the table. We have a second on that, and all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
And I'll revise this plan and get you a copy of the revised
Yeah, like a week or
locations.
so,
Yep.
sure.
Sounds good.
And if you can, what plants are gonna be up there and what plants are gonna be down. That's a lot, please. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a request for determination of applicability for 14 Fairview Avenue, map 48, parcel N5-9 for access steps to the pond and a shed replacement and relocation. Welcome. Hi.
Good evening. No, address what
Would you introduce,
Amy and I talked about was
would you introduce,
for the shed area, we're going to,
excuse me just a minute, let me just ask, you, would you introduce yourself for the
oh,
record?
I'm sorry.
It's all right, thanks.
Rockwood Clark. I'm
Okay.
representing Clark Lord, who is my nephew, as a matter of fact.
Okay, thank you.
And what we're doing is building a set of steps. I should show you pictures, I think you have them, of the area that we're building these steps. I'll show them to you. This one. And this one here.
Yeah, we can pass it around,
We can pass
sure.
it around.
Good, thank you.
And you can see that the roads are there, and that's how they get down to the pond. And what we're doing is gonna try to make that accessible with these high steps. Trying not to disturb too much of the land. And then on either side, on one side, we'll be putting 240 square feet of mitigation, 3 bayberry, 1 blueberry, and 3 inkberry. And it shows on the plan where they're going over here. And then for the shed area, the old shed goes down, and then a new shed goes in, a 12 by 16 foot shed, which the mitigation for that will involve 360 square feet, 3 blueberry, 8 inkberry, and 8 bayberry. Pine Harbor will be building the shed and taking out the old shed. And there are a couple of trees that will be coming down too. The shed has a 33-foot setback from Fairview Avenue. And it has about a 67 or 63-foot distance from the edge of wetland. That's pretty much it.
Okay, good, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Amy, do you have any comments?
Sure, we'll do the staircase first, and when I say staircase, it's a very loose term. It's wooden timbers set into the ground with, on one side, there'll be like a railing going down. Where the stakes are is where the actual steps will be. So our regulations usually say a raised set of stairs so that vegetation can grow underneath. It's pretty heavily shaded and treed there, and it's a north face. So it'd be really hard to get vegetation to grow underneath that. So I do think that the better way is to do these just treads in the ground for this particular instance. I should mention right now, one of the conditions for approval I would have is that they move their little watercraft, their kayaks and canoes up, because they're in the bordering vegetated wetland, but have them move them up to the top of the slope, at least into their, yard area.
Their backyard.
Into this, just because they are actually in the bordering vegetated wetland down there and shouldn't be there off-season. Then the shed, it went from a 12 by 18 to a 12 by 16. That way they don't have to do the full building permit. Still has to meet the setbacks from Fairview, but that's a building department thing. What type of, is it gonna be on sonotubes or is it gonna be on a slab? Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay. I would guess at most it would be on a slab. So what I would recommend is, because it's a fairly large shed, it's 12 by 16, is that the roof runoff from it either go into, a French drain around the exterior, just a stone trench around the drip line, or a dry well.
Okay.
There are a couple trees to be removed. Two of the 3 by the shed are uprooted anyways. And then there's one other one. And then there's a widowmaker, a tree that got snapped in half that Rocky had mentioned, closer to the stairway, which I would recommend removal of. So provided that they, do the plantings this spring. And I've already spoken with Rocky about the no fertilizers and chemicals, which if you've been to the site, it's very natural and they don't seem to be doing anything anyway. But I would like to see those boats moved upslope because they are damaging. But with those conditions, I'd recommend approval of the project with a -3.
Thank you. Mark, do you have any comments?
No comments, no questions.
John?
Couple of questions. Just to the, I guess it's the east of the proposed steps, there's several hollies growing up along there.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not clearly shown on this plan. Are you intending to leave those plantings as they are?
Yes, on the east side.
Okay, and so the other thing is, down, as Amy mentioned, there's a bunch of watercraft in the BVW, one of which is a fairly large-looking canoe, which, to my casual glance, looked like it was set on top of a fallen large, maybe oak or something. I'm just wondering what, and it's partly a question for you, Amy, but also for you, is what's the intention there, and should that be taken away, fallen trees down there, or should they be left?
My recommendation is not in their access area to the water itself. It's kind of off to the side where that it's habitat and it should be left. It's not a hazard at any point, so it's down, it's not hanging, it's down.
It's a recent fall, I think.
Fairly recent fall, but it is down and they are leaning a boat against it, so I recommend, we'll put it in the letter that we send out too, but that's to remain, because it's not a hazard, and it is good for habitat in a BBW.
But I did hear about the kayaks and everything. They all can be moved up.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, John. Brad?
Done?
Any questions,
Yeah, I
comments?
just have one question. In doing the stairway, are you just going to be setting the garden ties into the existing grade, or will you be doing any excavation or changing of the existing grade in that area?
Just building it into the grade.
Just building it into the existing
Right.
grade?
Yeah.
Okay. And what would be, so you'd just be leaving the existing dirt between each of the,
We're going to put 3/4 inch native gravel
gravel between the?
Yeah.
Okay.
for drainage.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Alan?
No comments, no?
And I had no comments either, so
I don't check for comments.
any comments from attendees, audience? No. All right. Can we have a motion on this?
I would move for approval of the NOI, is that what it's, NOI?
No, it's an RDA.
RDA, sorry. Of 14 Fairview with a -3.
Thank you. Second, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item we have on the agenda is notice of intent for
Have to wait till you
4
confirm it.
Shady Drive, new dwelling and
And do
appurtenances.
the
This is
building-
a
the shed
follow-up to
registration.
the prior meetings we've had on this. Good evening.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Hi, how are you?
All yours. Yep.
Okay, I was just, you look deep in thought. Good evening, John O'Reilly, project engineer. To my left is the applicant, Brian Hellauer. We were here, I think, a month ago, and I think the only question was the mitigation. Commission's wasn't interested in granting that type of waiver. And having met with Amy on the site, right after the meeting, we've come up with this revised site plan, which basically addresses 3,500 square feet of area that's going to be mitigated and planted. And I've actually moved the mitigation, most of it, to within the 50-foot buffer that is very sparse of vegetation. And I've also shown two areas of putting shrubs in along the property line. I will talk about the northern property line. We do have some abutters here who have expressed concern. We were showing on the north line a series of trees, holly and cedar. There's a concern of shading of the building, and I've talked to Brian, and we would like to change those out and go with more of a shrubby vegetation and not do the tree. We were initially thinking that the trees would screen the house, which was, I thought, was the intention, and they're concerned about shading. So I just want to get that right out on the table, that we'd like to change the species on the north to include shrubs and not trees that might put the house in shadow. The other change we've done is we have shown a 3-foot wide footpath through the area, and then also showed a vista corridor on the plan. Both of those were talked about during our on-site, and so we've added those to the plan. And we're also installing a total of 7 trees, excuse me, 4 oaks and 3 shadbush trees, and then some sweet pepper and then high bush blueberry. I think that was the major issue the last time we were here, and happy to answer any questions the commission has.
Thank you, John. Amy, do you have comments?
John, I might be missing something. Where's the Vista corridor?
Might have been through here.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at this plan. I think it's a little different than yours.
This is the planting plan. I'm sorry.
Sorry, it was in the back. So just to remind the commission, the house is a proposed 1-bedroom dwelling with a garage, and it's outside the 60-foot, even the deck's outside the 60-foot setback. It is a vacant lot. This lot, a few years ago, was pretty heavily impacted by the tornado. They previously, I don't know if it's the current, not Mr. Halauer, but the owner of the property had those trees removed. There wasn't a lot of understory there to begin with, but the entirety of the 50-foot buffer was really compromised there. So I think in this particular instance, they have a unique opportunity to improve the buffer to Sand Lake by replanting the 50. In addition, the sides of the property lines, I would recommend on the northern property line a little bit more shade-loving plants such as sweet pepper bush, winterberry holly, viburnums, things that are medium to tallish shrubs, but certainly not trees. So hopefully we'll provide that screening, but not the additional shading that was we were concerned about. I think in general, I think this would provide a net benefit to the resource area by actually having a very well vegetated 50-foot buffer. They also are proposing a single rail fence to act as a no disturb zone, to really show the no disturb zone there. So, and then of course with our conditions about no chemicals and fertilizers, roof runoff to go into dry wells. I guess I should ask, well, it's very little of it is in our jurisdiction, but the driveway, is the driveway pervious or impervious? It's really right by the garage, that's our jurisdiction, but just out of curiosity.
Just gravel.
It does, it's
Gravel?
gravel, pervious.
Is that also on the landscaping plan, which I'm not?
I don't even label it on the landscape plan.
With those conditions, I would recommend approval of the project. Oh, and that the planting should go in the same or next growing season as construction of the home, so there's not a delay. Okay, and then we'll put a monitoring condition on there.
All right, thank you. Comments, Mark, do you have any?
No remarks.
John? Brad?
Nice work with the changes, appreciated. Is it possible to have the split rail fence pushed from 51 out to 55?
It's such a tiny lot, we'd like to have as much room as we could in the back. Obviously, if it's the difference of a yes or no denial or approval, we could talk about it, but we'd,
How about 53? What's the difference?
I think that's a reasonable compromise. The reason I'm asking for it is because, you know, we try to use that 50 to 60 to have a somewhat as a zone where folks aren't going to encroach upon it, lawn won't grow further, and so having that fence a little further out might encourage that in the future. Yeah, I'm not going to go to Matt on a couple feet, so 53 sounds fine.
53, okay.
I agree with David's recommendation.
No comment, looks nice, good luck.
The only comment I have, Brad, so with respect to the 51 feet on the fence, the 50 to 60 foot was intended to provide passage. So outside of the 50.
Right.
So if the fence is on the 51, it's outside of the no disturb zone, and it also would provide more room for passage around the structure. I guess I'm comfortable leaving it there.
Yeah, I'm concerned about encroachment right to the 50, and that's the nature of having no new structures
Yeah.
from 60 out. And what typically happens over time, or can happen over time, is that folks will build out, put lawn out, or just use right up to the 50 or further. The fence is gonna prevent encroachment further into the zone.
Yeah.
But before we had the 60-foot line, we often had vegetative buffer strips that were from 50 to 55.
Yeah.
And that was something we commonly used. So that was my basis for the 55.
And what's the distance between the deck and the, well, I mean, the lawn area, I guess? No, let's go to the deck and the 50?
Between 50 and 20.
So yeah, the fence is at 51 feet, the deck is 62 feet, so there's 11 feet.
So we still would have 10 feet in there if we leave it at 51. I mean, I'd
And you
be
would have-
interested in anybody else's comments on that, too.
And it would be lawn right to the fence, correct?
Well, we actually have showing some ground cover from some wildflower, some of the ground cover that's on the planting plan up through that area, about 5 feet off the deck.
Yeah, it's half and half.
And there's a space in the deck for the pathway to,
Yeah, that
Right,
remains from the
traverse it.
original design.
yeah. Any other thoughts on 51 versus 53? No.
Once the fence rots and falls down, I guess it won't matter.
Now, there's a positive view.
It's gonna be a chain link. All right, so, can we have a motion on this, please?
I don't know if you, again, comments from the audience?
Comments? I'm sorry, yeah, absolutely. Anybody from the audience would like to comment on any of the proposed changes that are before us tonight? No? Okay, thank you.
I'll move for approval of the NOI on 4 Shady Drive with the appropriate comments prior.
I'll second.
And where are we leaving the fence?
I'm okay with 51. I'm not gonna squabble over 2 feet, but if you folks feel
So-
more strongly, that's perfectly fine with me.
All right, so the motion is to leave the fence.
Well, I've
where
got
it is.
agreement, then we moved to 53, so I don't know why we would not use that.
Well, I think as an argument is to leaving that 10-foot traverse
Do you think
lane.
there's environmental benefit to having it at 53 versus 51?
I do, because at 51, they're putting plantings along the grass side of the fence. Not plantings, but they're vegetating it. It's natural vegetation there. If we move it into that 2 feet, then I'm assuming part of that is going to be impacted by it. I'm sure the plantings will stay,
Yeah,
or the vegetation, it won't make a difference one way or the other, really.
The plantings would stay, so,
Yeah.
so you would have less potential for encroachment. Again, it's 2 feet, so, if somebody strongly objects to it, then that's fine, but to me, it seems that it would be environmental benefit that you would support.
You want to amend your motion, Mark, or leave it as it is? It's up to you. Your motion is on the table.
I don't feel that it's a significant impact one way or the other. I understand your point, but I don't feel that it's significant enough to be concerned about.
John?
My comment is, you guys have done a great job trying to actually satisfy what the Conservation Commission sees as the requirements for doing something on this site. And I don't think requiring moving the fence 2 feet is gonna help much of anything. And I would just assume, leave the thing as it is, because they've done a great job. And as far as I can see, there's gonna be ground cover there one way or another anyway, so I'm with Mark, basically.
Okay, then,
All right.
then have it at 51, then we've got 3 to 1, so to speak. So again, not a big deal. It was common to ask for that vegetative buffer strip at a time, but I have no problem having 3 commissioners disagree. So
Okay.
that's fine.
So can we have a second on the motion, please?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Appreciate the discussion, gentlemen, I think.
Sure, thank you. You can move it to 53 if you want to.
Can you get me?
Happy to be back in double figures, that's
plan?
all.
Thanks.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you, you
Thank you so much.
The next item on the agenda is a notice of intent for 0 Clearwater Drive, map 73, or parcels, map 73, parcels P94 and 95, with a new dwelling and appurtenances. This is also a continuation of a prior hearing we had on this. Welcome.
We have our engineer on the phone, Matt Creighton.
Could you introduce yourself?
Hey,
to the
everybody.
record, please?
Matt Creighton from the BSC Group.
Thank you.
I'm Christina Hagopian. I am in contract for this land along with my husband.
Paul Angelini.
Good, thank you.
The proposed project is a continuation from the last hearing. We listened to what the Conservation Commission had to say at the last hearing regarding trying to minimize and reduce our impacts overall. We've met with Amy as a group to discuss what some of those things might be, and provided the commission with a follow-up letter kind of explaining some of the changes, as well as a revised plan. Christina had gone in and met with Amy, a follow-up after we had submitted that, to talk about some of the mitigation requirements and what we might be able to do to beef up some of the mitigation. And so I'd like to just go over some of those changes with y'all tonight. We reduced the size of the house by about 17%. In doing so, we have about a 10% reduction within the 50 to 100. This is allowing us to push the house up towards the roadway just a little bit more and a little bit further away from that inland bank. So we're now 90 feet to the inland bank. The workshop has been reduced in size overall to a 10 by 18. It was also put to the side of the house. And if you want, Amy, do you want me to share my screen really quick? Just show you.
You're welcome to,
If I
yes.
can. Yeah.
Sorry, so just real quick, there is a new plan, because this has been kind of evolving over the past few weeks. So there's a brand-new plan that I passed a few copies out to the commission, I think Matt will show it, of the changes that have been made since the big plan that you have.
Yeah, it might just, all it is really is we outlined the original house in red, and then you can, just so you can see the change and how we shifted everything over. It might help you follow along. It's not really a revision in the grand scheme, like we changed the house or anything of that nature. So, so as you can see in the red outline is where the original house was. We were able to kind of turn it a little bit towards the roadway and push it up, like I had mentioned. So now it's about 90 feet from the inlet bank. We did relocate the shed.
You're breaking up a bit when you're breaking up a little bit when we listen to you.
Oh, sorry. We did relocate the shed and reduce the size of it overall. It will require a variance from building department because we won't meet the sideline setback. However, they felt like we would be able to receive that variance. Simply because this is an unimproved way and we won't be blocking it in any way. We ended up overall, like I say, after we had revised the letter to Amy, and Christina had gone in, she wanted us to add, and we highlighted and kind of put a couple of things right at the top of it. One is from a mitigation standpoint that we're looking to remove the fence that surrounds the property in order to free up wildlife passage. We're proposing to use micro clover on the entire site to eliminate the need for any kind of a fertilizer or anything of that nature, as it's a nitrogen fixer. We're looking to hire an arborist to come in to save as many trees as possible, as long as they're a safe range from the house itself and won't affect the house later on down the road. And then we added the native vegetative areas on both sides here, the two different planting areas where we're proposing viburnum, arrowwood, sweet pepper bush, and high bush blueberry to kind of beef those areas up. And then as a visual line, we're proposing wood bollards, 4x4 bollards, just along that natural heritage line, just as a visual to make sure people don't enter into it when they're, cutting or mowing or doing any work out behind the house. So like I say, the entire project has been kind of revamped and pushed as far towards the house as possible at the request of the commission. And hopefully we've addressed all your comments and concerns. We're happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Amy, do you have any comments?
Sure. I had the pleasure of meeting with the team and then Christina the other day to talk about this, to try to find a way that we could accommodate what they were hoping to see for a property, as well as meeting the commission's regulations. And I think what it seemed to be coming down to at the last meeting was the whole mitigation piece, is that this is a vacant native lot, so it is hard to do on-site mitigation. It's not devoid of vegetation. There's not a lot of invasives here. So this is a tough one. So we encouraged, the commission encouraged them to try to move things back, which they were able to get 304 square feet more of the structure outside the 100-foot buffer. Moved and made the shed or workshop smaller, because that previously had been closer to the wetland. For all along, they were talking about removing it's a chain link fence that really encompasses the property, so just the removal of that will greatly help for wildlife habitat and passage across the property. And in speaking with Christina, spoke about the two hatched areas that you see on your plan. It's going to be disturbed just because it's within the limit of work, and they need to disturb it in order to do some of the work, but then replanting those areas with a mix of viburnums, high bush blueberries, and sweet pepper bush, which should do very well in this area. And then along that limit of work line, which is the limit of natural heritage, they are proposing to do those wooden bollards. This is about 70 to 75 feet away from the edge of the resource area. The closest point of the house is about 90 feet. The house itself, the patio, is the closest, and I would say that's probably about 80-ish feet away.
I was going to say it's about 80 feet.
Yeah. And I think another benefit that we could agree upon was that the entirety of the property, they would be willing to not do any chemical or fertilizers. And I did explain, because originally organics were thought about, but I explained that organics still have the phosphorus and nitrogen, and that the microclover mix, the purpose of the clover in that is to fix nitrogen, to still give it that, green aesthetic. So, and then also, I know one of my concerns personally, and I think some of the commission, was that within the limit of work, that a large number of trees would have to come down. So I think their willingness to hire an arborist and their desire to save some of the trees, and see, it sounds like from speaking with you, and you can tell more about this if it comes up, that it's your desire to kind of have a wooded lot and to be in character with the rest of the neighborhood and not just have a wide open lot area. So with all those things, with the no chemicals on the entire lot, preserving some of the trees, getting rid of the fence, scooting everything closer to the road, and having, in essence, a 75-foot no disturb zone, I think this project, in my opinion, meets our requirements. That it's hard to quantify all those each individual things as mitigation, but I think when you add them up, I think the requirement for mitigation, I wrote it down. They had 1,214 square feet of hardscape that was proposed to be in jurisdiction. That's between the staircase and then some of the stuff up closer to the 100-foot buffer. So I would, with these changes that have been outlined, I can recommend approval of the project.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Alan, let's start with you. Do you have any comments, questions?
I have no comments.
All right, Jim?
No, I think I agree with Amy's recommendation, and I think that they have shown a good faith effort to try to address the concerns that we raised in the last meeting.
Thank you.
Brett?
None.
None. John?
Okay, so I have a bone to pick with the plan, and it's a detail, but I've got to bring it up anyway, which is that the statement is being made that the closest point of the house is 90 feet from the edge of wetlands. But the line that is drawn and is labeled with 90 feet is not perpendicular to the tangent, excuse me for the technicality here, but it's
Okay.
not perpendicular to the tangent of the edge of wetland, and so the edge of the house is actually closer than 90 feet. If that 90 feet is the distance of that ray going from the edge of wetland to the corner of the house. I don't know if it's enough. Do you understand what I'm saying?
The wetland line moves away from the house as it runs, so that's the closest point to the house. So from there on out, we'd be moving away.
But if you,
So I know it looks like it runs along the backside, but it actually starts to pull towards the pond a little bit. So we try to pick the closest point and utilize that point.
all right, well, I'm not convinced, but I'm not gonna spend a half an hour arguing that point. I think it's a little less than 90 feet, but it's still, and that makes the buffer a little less than 75 feet, because the 75 feet is measured from the corner of the deck there, if I
Yeah,
understand it.
that, so in that area, it would be closer to 70. That's why I said between 70 and 75.
Okay, anyway.
But I see what you mean.
Otherwise, I don't have any comments.
Good, thank you. Mark, any comments?
Yeah, that distance John was just talking about, I think the proposed plan is very, very close. I don't think there's a lot of variation there. Overall, I see a lot of progress in this, and only question I've got is the driveway. Permeable or asphalt, what is it?
It's gravel.
Gravel?
Gravel.
That's all I have to ask.
Yeah, the only comment I had was, there's a, in the comments that were submitted with this application, it mentions a zoning variance for the workshop. And it says if the zoning variance is denied, the applicant would like to shift the structure closer to the resource area to meet all standards as a second option. You would have to come back to us
We
with
understand.
any variations to that.
I did have a very good call with zoning, where they couldn't guarantee it, of course, but she said I had a very strong case for it, given that private way.
Okay, all right, good.
And we could also, just to that end, we have to comment on zoning board of appeal applications, so when it comes to us, we will make sure that if this passes tonight, that we'll make sure to put that they really did that to accommodate our conditions to be farther from the wetlands, so that should help.
Okay,
Thank you.
good. So you can contact Amy if you need language for that, or you're gonna make
We
a
already,
comment to that
we get
effect?
routed all the zoning applications to comment on, so we'll put that in there.
That's great.
All right, good. Good. With that, any comments from the audience? Any butters? No? All right, thank you. Can we have a motion on this?
I would move to approve the NOI for, where are we?
Zero Clearwater?
Zero Clearwater Drive.
Can we have a second on that, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you so much.
guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Next items on the agenda is order of conditions for 15 Dome Road.
Give me 1 second here, folks. Okay, so this was the second amendment for this order. Remember the last time we talked, it was, the patio was constructed larger than approved, and what they did was mitigate. I do still have, and still have time to do it, I have to get those fines out. I'll do that this week. But if you have any questions on the second amendment of this, please let me know. I think there's only a couple of conditions there. Yep, 6. Thank you, Jamie. Any questions on the amended November 17th?
Did we have a question on the sod that was used in the back of the house? They maintained that that sod was different than the sod that was applied to the front of the house.
No, we had said if it ever needs to be reseeded, it has to be reseeded with a native mix
Yeah.
from here on out. They can't-
So, hi, folks, this is Craig Nichols, property owner.
Yes.
I apologize, I couldn't get there, I'm a little sick, but that was a question, and I had committed to going off to the landscaper and getting exactly the mix of turf that was used, as I explained. The front turf was a bluegrass, and it is beautiful, and no chemicals applied. And then the back was what was approved by, when we asked, it needed to be a native grass, with no fertilization and no irrigation. I have the paperwork that I was gonna bring down to town hall. I can tell you the name of the grass, but I literally have the 2 receipts for both different types of sod that was planted. I hope that clarifies it.
Wonderful. Yes, Mr. Nichols, it would be helpful, I think, if you drop that off, just so Amy can document that in the file.
Or scan and email it to me, it's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Amy, I'll probably bring it down because I'm looking at the copy and it's somewhat light, so I'll make sure I get you a copy.
Well, as
Good.
long, if you're not feeling well, we do ask that you don't come in to town hall.
No, I understand. I understand.
Thank you.
Thank you for following up on that, that's
We do
helpful.
appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
All right. I had no other comments. Anyone have any comments on this? No. Can we have a motion to approve this, please?
Move to approve the amended order of conditions for 15 Dome Road, amended November 17th, 2021.
All, a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, it passes. Thank you. Next item is an order of
Thank you,
conditions.
committee.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
committee, and thank you, Amy.
Next item is an order of conditions for 99 Riverside Drive.
This is another amendment, so it's just this amended special conditions with today's date. 7 conditions on there.
Yep.
And of course, the new plan is referenced on the first page anyways.
Okay. Any comments on this? So we automatically extend the expiration date on these whenever we amend them, is that right?
No, typically when you amend, the expiration date stays the same. They had asked for both an extension as well as an amendment. You granted the extension at the last meeting and signed it.
Okay, all right.
So now we have to change,
19th, 2023, right?
yep, we changed it already, yep.
Okay.
Because we'll probably we do it to issuance date, so usually Friday we get them out.
Okay, all right, good. Any other comments on this?
I would say number 5, Amy, capitalize your department.
Okay.
Very minor, but
Thank you.
not.
Other comments?
I move that we approve the order conditions for 99 Riverside Drive.
Second? Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Passes, thank you. Next item is a request for certificate of compliance for 24 Winchmere Harbor Drive, map 15, parcel E4-6. New
The-
dwelling with septic and deck.
Yep. This was a really old one, which has been superseded by other things. That you notice these 2 are the same address, different owners. So the original owner was Arthur Crooks for the actual dwelling. We've been out there numerous times about the other project, and then this guy realized that this was hanging. The property's transferring. Unfortunately, the Barnetts are lovely people. But anyway, for this particular one, the dwelling and deck are exactly as approved, and we would recommend approval for that. Do you want to do both together?
Might as well, sure.
And the other one is for William and Judith Barnett, who are the current owners of 24 Winchmere Harbor Drive. There's invasive management and replacement of on-grade wooden stairs. So they, Blue Flax did a phenomenal job on the site, got rid of the invasives, and have been replanting, it's the banks of Carding Mill Brook, I want to say. It goes from Saquatucket, like where Brax is, the brook that, I always get Cold Brook and Carding Mill confused. It might be Cold.
They're the same ones. Yeah, Andrews is too.
Andrews is the other one, so, okay.
Oh, those are
They've-
two names for the same?
Carding
Carding
Mill
Mill and
is the same as
Cold.
Colebrook.
Okay.
Same.
That's
same.
right, Andrews River is the other one. They've done a nice job of revegetating with a mix of shrubs as well as a ton of wildflowers. It's more of a meadow habitat on the hillside there. And we're recommending approval with ongoing conditions for the new people could continue to manage invasives, and they, of course, cannot be touching that. They cannot be, other than the annual mowing of the meadow, they cannot be altering that area.
Okay.
So we'd recommend approval of both for 24 Winchmere Harbor Drive.
All right. Can we have a motion on these two certificates of compliance, please?
I'll move to approve the two certificates of compliance for 24 Winchmere Harbor Drive.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Certificates pass. Then we have 4 sets of minutes. I think there were 2 in Dropbox, Amy.
Yep, we're always hopeful that there's more, so, but two's really good.
When did the second one show up? I didn't see it this afternoon even.
It's
That's
August 18th and September 15th. I don't know when. Melissa's the one doing them, not me. On that note, we have been able to hire an outside person to catch us. We have probably about 6, 7, 8 sets of minutes we have to catch up on. And we've been given approval to, we have an outside person who's gonna help,
Good.
which is gonna take Melissa, give her more time to do other things.
Wonderful.
She's good at minutes.
She is.
Yeah, she is.
Well, she'll be, so what'll be nice is once we get caught up, one set of minutes every 2 weeks is not a huge deal, especially when we have shorter meetings. But the catch-up from
Yeah.
the backlog we had was a lot, because we have a lot of meetings that go 4 hours. So there's, if you didn't, yeah, we have September 15th and August 18th.
18th, right. You want to, let's do August 18th first,
Sure?
if you're looking at them now. There's one question I had under the Wawatasi on the
Yep.
page 3, and it's about the, I don't know how far down. It's the third sentence, I believe, where it starts, Mr. Burgess, and he says contended these points using the images provided in his letter. I'm not sure contended is the right word for that, Amy. Maybe contested these points?
Contested, probably.
Yeah.
Gotta
all right.
find that, hold on. Reiterated Attorney
Page
Wallace post.
3, 4th line down from the top.
Oh, contested. Yeah, I got it. Okay.
Anybody have a chance to look at these?
I did that one. I have no
Okay.
comments on the August one. I'm going through September now.
Okay. Can we have a motion on the August minutes for August 18th, 2021, please?
I'll move to approve the minutes from August 18th, 2021.
Okay.
Second?
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
It's up to you if you want to do the other set now, or, I mean, take a few minutes, or if you want to put them on the next agenda. It's
I
up to
think we
you.
have time. We're early tonight, so let's, let's keep going. Get these
Melissa does a
done.
great job. I'm halfway through.
All right,
I've got no comments so far.
well, take a few minutes. It's fine.
Yeah, not even typos. Jeez.
It's remarkable. Who are you gonna have do these things now? Just bring somebody in that's,
We hired, the town in general, hired an outside person has evidently done board minutes a lot.
yeah,
Just somebody part-time to catch up some boards. Ours was made priority.
yeah, because a lot of these, I mean, there's some interpretation that's implied in the
Helpful, I know.
comments that are made.
Some of these other ones that are pretty old, that we're behind in. Melissa made sure that the ones that related to court cases, like, that she did those.
Okay, good.
But, yeah, no, of course, having substantive knowledge of what you're talking about certainly helps when doing these minutes.
Yeah,
And the other person may not have conservation knowledge.
right,
But we'll see. I mean, they have minute or taking abilities evidently, so.
okay. All right. Everybody have a chance to get through these? Any
Yeah.
other comments?
I'm fine with them.
Can we have a motion on the minutes for September 15th, 2021, please?
I move we accept the minutes for September 15th, 2021.
And a second? Seconded by John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. So that's it. Discussion and possible vote on the Wetland Protection Act revisions.
So I apologize. I have not gotten to they're minor edits. I will get to them. We'll put it on the next meeting. They will be on the next meeting. That way we can make another presentation to the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
So I will do those. And we had pretty major damage after the nor'easter. There's a couple of still hazard trees that we're cleaning up, but we've cut a lot of trees in the past few weeks with the help of DPW, AmeriCorps, and the Harwich Conservation Trust, and we've also lent our support, Melissa and I, to Harwich Conservation Trust on their lands because they were so nice and helped us. So a lot of time has been dedicated because there were not just trees down over trails, but like really dangerous ones over trails. So we felt like we had to take care of those immediately before somebody got hurt.
Yeah, good. And you say we have a follow-up meeting with the Board of Selectmen
Well,
on the changes?
we'll have to have a meeting with the Board. The Board of Selectmen voted to get your bylaw on for town meeting, but they did not vote whether they're going to support it or
Right.
not. So we'll need to have another meeting. I would like to have that sometime in December or early January, and that way we can tee it up for meeting the deadline for, I mean, it's on town meeting anyways, but it would be nice to have a selectman
And
recommendation.
that's in May?
Yes, but we have to have that, first week of February is when the warrant articles and stuff are due.
Okay,
So it's in the warrant, it'd be nice to have a positive recommendation.
yeah,
So we will do that next meeting. Next meeting is December 1st, so.
okay. Good.
We need to approve the meeting dates for the next year. You don't need to worry about filing deadlines, that's all for us. But meeting dates, were these in your Dropbox? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anybody want a copy? Because if you approve them, you can hang it on your wall like I do.
So,
If anybody
is
wants.
there anything in here that isn't the first and third Wednesday of every month?
No, we were able to finagle it. Wednesdays are not usually holidays, so it's just filing, some filing deadlines are a little wonky. That's on our end with holidays, but you don't have to worry about that. So it's first and third Wednesdays.
Good. So we have a motion to approve the 2022 meeting schedule for conservation.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Wonderful. And that concludes the business. Just so everyone knows, John and I will be sitting before the Board of Selectmen on the 29th, to present our annual report. It's pretty much the same, I assume, the numbers changed, but very similar to what we've presented in the past. We have some separate lists of violations and everything in case they have any questions on those. But I think Amy did an excellent job on pulling together the report for us. And anybody that wants to come, I'm sure you'd be welcome.
Yeah, we update it obviously every year. Projects tend to change a little bit, so we updated all that.
Yes.
Can I bring up another subject?
Sure.
I noticed in the Selectmen's packet this week, they talked about the dam at the reservoir. There's extensive study on that. Do we have any input on that? I know Heinz Prof and, Natural Resources. What is our purview, reviewing that? My concern is the maintenance going forward, or the lack of maintenance. I have water rights in that reservoir personally. We control the height of that water in deeded rights. So I just wanted to know what our purview as a conservation, how much, because I know you have put a lot of faith in the BSE study group management plan for that area, and how does that work
Yep.
together with this dam and the maintenance? And my other concern is the lack of, I guess, thinking of it out loud, because when the cranberry bogs were being utilized, the person that ran the bogs managed the flumes and the height of the reservoir so that we wouldn't have an event where it overflowed over top of the dam. Now that we don't have that in place, who is the designated person to make sure, like a nor'easter storm is coming or a tornado event, that the boards are at the right level and that we don't have a problem with the raising waters from the river flowing from Hinckley's Pond down? I think it's something that should be discussed and put forward, and whatever I can do to help out.
And documented, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's some discrepancies in that whole study that they did, because the actual reservoir was built in 1929. It's recorded in the Barnstable Registry of Deeds as the Agawam Power Reservoir Company, by Marcus Uran. So there's a lot of stuff and a lot of history that people just kind of don't know about. And we just put money to problems, but there's a lot of common sense that can be put in place.
Yeah.
Is the study
I
complete?
was at,
I don't know.
I've seen it.
It's
a
like
draft.
100 and something pages.
Yep,
Yeah. Is it to
it's a little bit
replace,
of light reading,
replace the dam? What's the intention?
no.
But right now, they're saying they don't have to.
No, they're saying they don't have to, but they're making so I was asked very recently, I was not on the original, we were not on the original list of reviewers. I've been asked recently to review it, and I kind of gave basic comments because it's just a draft. I said, of course, everything that's done has to go in front of the Conservation Commission, because it's all riverfront. But there's some things in there that I was a little bit concerned about that they're proposing in order to keep such as, and again, it's a draft, removal of vegetation from alongside the river near where the wing walls are of the dam, because they're worried about the root masses, or if the plants were to topple, that they were going to deteriorate the walls but I feel opposite, that if you clear that area out of vegetation, and people will trample it more too. Yes, we do have some eyes on it. I've just started looking into it, but the Conservation Commission will ultimately have a vote in what happens with that project. Right now, it's at the, I forget what the federal level because of the dam. But I haven't had a chance to read all of it because it is 300 pages. But
Who's sponsoring it? What federal level?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
It is a concern to me too, because the property is under the care and custody of the Conservation Commission. So I would think.
Well, that's why it was brought to my attention that we should have been party to this. And weren't.
But to Alan's point, as far as maintaining the water levels, we don't do anything with that.
That would be the Department of Natural Resources, Heinz
Yeah,
Croft.
Heinz does.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
In years past, it was a herring warden. With the modern Natural Resource Department, it's been that responsibility. To my eye, all these structures need operation and maintenance plans.
That's the intent of this,
Yeah.
is an operation and maintenance plan.
If they adjust the fishway, then my agency, Division of Marine Fisheries, would require an operation and maintenance plan for the fishway. And so, we would look at that carefully and consider all uses, all pond levels.
So what was the original reason for building that dam and creating the reservoir?
For the bogs, cranberry bogs all the way up the river, from that area to Hinckley's Pond for irrigation, for flowage and
Well,
water.
how does that reservoir help bogs up at Hinckley's?
Because up at Hinckley's, there was bogs between the reservoir years ago, all the way along the river. There was bogs in the river, and there was all types of dams all the way up to Hinckley's. There's probably 12 dams
Yeah.
in
Sand
between.
Pond Woodlands, there's a couple dams up there.
From Great Western Road, Main Street, the Route 6 highway, and there's about 7 belong to Great Swamp, to the Hinckley's, to headwaters.
Are all those dams
They're gone.
breached?
No,
at
they're
this-
gone, yeah, they're breached. Because
They're
a
non-functional.
gentleman years ago, there was a heavy rain came, and he started at the top, pulling the boards rather than starting at the bottom down by the reservoir, and it wiped out all the dams and dikes.
I shouldn't laugh, that's.
Well, but this is what I fear, is that if you don't have a management plan in place, Heinz Prof is the guy, right now, but what happens, what's his redundancy if he's out of town or something happens,
And we have
when the
had
cranberry
some
gra-
overtopping, this one in
Right.
particular, this past year.
Yeah, you
When
need
the
pond
cran-
level targets too, and so I've asked Heinz to get a gauge at that site for a while in the reservoir, so you have targets knowing where you should be.
I mean, our property had deeded rights to that reservoir. We do have deeded rights, land recorded rights, that I could drop the reservoir 6 inches below the mud sill, if I have to.
What's that mean?
Means I could drop the whole water right out of the reservoir, completely.
6
inches above the mud sill of the outlet flume. So if the bottom of the outlet flume is 5 feet below the top of the water level, I could drop it down to 6 inches.
Why would you?
Yeah.
Well, in case my lift pump in the reservoir, if I had to work on it, maintenance, to replace culverts, so that the water wasn't there in ponding it.
Yeah. To
That's
replace-
been in place for 70 years.
Replace parts of your pump. Yeah.
Wow.
So these are the things that, there's a lot to it, as they say. And it's some things that, in the essence of conservation, there's also preservation of what we're trying to keep there. And that's where they talked about the trees and all that, the growth. I mean, I got photographs, there was no trees there at all.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm a little concerned about that process. I wonder if there's anything punitive going on at a higher level to not include the Conservation Commission.
Well, that's
I'll
why
send it-
sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I'll send what because it is public document, so I'll send you what I have.
Okay.
Some light reading.
Well, I know, we really want to, but it's an there'll be an opportunity at some
It's
point
interesting.
to change
I'd
that
like
way
to
it
see it.
looks.
Well, it's an important asset to the town, the
Right.
whole the Heron River watershed.
Yeah.
And
there'll-
that's the real, that makes the embondment.
Yeah. And I'm interested because the fishway will need work probably in a 10-year window. Not a
Yeah.
full rehab, but it'll need some
They
work.
looked at that, the
They did.
integrity of that, and they found it to be, not great, but not
Look.
in immediate need, so
Yeah, the walls
several
are
years.
good, the weirs, some of the weirs need replacement before too long.
Yeah.
And there was more washout from the salt
Right.
water area, where the erosion come down there, from the high water mark coming and going
Correct.
there.
Yeah.
Than there is on the freshwater side.
Yeah, it needs another entrance pool to give fish a better place to queue up for the fishway.
Right.
So there's definitely things that could be done.
So, one question that occurs to me about the process is coastal resiliency, and since below the dam it's tidal,
Right.
sea level rise is gonna affect all of that, and is that taken into consideration in this report?
I didn't look at it, what I've read, I haven't
Something
looked
to-
at it through that lens,
something
but
to
I'll
think
keep
about.
an eye on it. I'll send it to everybody as well.
Do we, town pay for it, or was it outside dollars? Yeah, interesting.
Huh.
You gonna say something?
Oh, good.
While we're on the subject, going further upriver, I mean, the river being so choked, is there an opportunity to look at alternatives for assisting the riverbed all the way up?
I think it's a big issue, and talking to Craig Williams, who leased the bog previously, he recalls when bog guys used to send custom-made barges up the river that would basically dredge out the channel.
Oh, really?
And now there's it might be swamp loosestrife. There's some species that's just really kind of slowly growing in. And I think it's a problem coastwide. And, you know, towns aren't gonna be able to buy their own hydraulic dredge or whatever it is, and with mechanical dredge, hydraulic dredge, but at some point, I think that needs to be done. From what I gathered from Craig and other people, is that the bog guys used to do it 50 years ago. They just took care of it, because they had to have a conduit to get water.
Well, the flow was active, it was more active because they would control, every bog along the way would be underwater in the wintertime, and they would flow, and just from that natural, like the Grand Canyon, it would just continue to flush.
Yeah.
And the flushing isn't happening now.
Right.
Because it's just staying stagnant, and it's.
Plants are growing
It's
in.
really
and things-
bad
And things are
between-
falling down.
Yeah.
So if we're trying to get the herring to Hinckley's, you gotta be a big herring to get through there, 'cause
Well, they
it's
get
pretty challenging. No, I understand, but I'm, just natural sense, it's challenging, it's challenging.
I think in a 10-year window, it's gonna need a bunch of maintenance. You know, I'm working with Plymouth County right now. They wanna buy a hydro dredge and have an agreement to have my crew run it. And we're looking to buy a 18-foot hydro dredge from a California company that has a pump on it. And then it has a davit to rip out root balls. It'll need to be permitted. It'd have to be permitted in the river.
Of course.
So there's a lot to it, but
How much water does it draft?
2 feet.
That thing can go all the way up from like the West Reservoir
Yes.
up.
Yeah. It
There's
can be-
places there's not 2 foot of water up there.
It can be operated with divers, it can be, outboard engine, can be pushed. I'm not sure it's the perfect machine to use for this application, but I'd love to see mosquito control or the state buy a couple and then let towns use them.
And one other dam along that way too is underneath the railroad tracks, the bike path.
Yeah.
There's a huge culvert there, and they had divers, I remember the divers came down there and looked underneath of it for the structural integrity of it, which was still pretty well, and that was built in 1860. But,
How recent were the divers?
oh, this is 15, 20 years ago.
Okay. I made a request to DCR, which Department of Conservation and Recreation owns that bike path. So they own that culvert. I asked them to take a look at that, because I felt like it was jammed up, the
It'd be
flow.
enlarged. It
Well, that's just
should be
because
enlarged.
that's the height of, that. Well, no, actually, it's quite large, the culvert is. It's just the height of the water that has been raised in the reservoir has shrunk that visual scene of it, because
Okay.
there's an arch there. It's probably about 8, 10 feet
Oh, wow.
in circumference.
I wouldn't know that.
If you look at the flow coming out of it, it looks to me like there might be some debris in there that
Yeah, it could be
is
choked.
jammed up. So I'd love to see divers get in there, and I'd like to see it replaced, but at least, get people in there to look at it.
I would wonder if we just dropped the reservoir one time as part of maintenance too. That would lessen the water that's backed up all the way to Hinckley's. Well, not so much to Hinckley's, but to Main Street by Victor Ryder's old auction house. That would drop that level right down. I don't know what it would do. The fish would still get up. You'd see the natural Heron riverbed, because right now the river is distorted because of the impoundment. The natural riverbed is like a snake, and it's,
Yeah.
not centered. It could be off to the right or left.
It'd be easy to do what you're suggesting. You'd have to be very careful in the time of year,
Oh, exactly.
so you don't disrupt certain aquatic life.
Right, but I mean, that could be a cultural practice that could be very easy to do.
Yeah. Well,
That was done
Yeah.
for many years.
The board's the fishway. You could take out the exit boards, and you would be able to do that. I did not get a response from DCR on that request. They didn't even get back to me on it, so. Yeah, there's a lot that could be done, and I think it needs to be done, because we've kind of lost sight of some of these maintenance issues. And
It just gets larger and larger and harder and harder.
Why is the river so stagnant?
Because it's clogged up, in my opinion.
There's
I'm not a
so
river
much
expert,
vegetation.
but there's the growth has just choked it. It's kind of like I describe it to people having a chest cold.
It's
Hard to
weird.
breathe, and then when you're
Yeah.
clear, you feel good. So the river's choked up to me, in my
But
opinion.
so if you got more flow, where would it come from? Just Hinckley's?
I-
Long Pond, Hinckley, yeah.
Long Pond and Hinckley's?
Long Pond.
And that might move more of the phosphorus issues and nitrogen issues out of the Hinckley's Pond.
Yeah.
Here's the problem, though, is that in other watersheds, they've documented that its groundwater withdrawals have reduced surface flows,
Yeah.
which reduce those scouring flows.
True.
I haven't seen that data for this watershed, but it's probably an issue. You know, we're taking so much water out of the groundwater,
Yeah.
it flat out affects surface flow.
Sure. It's pretty, when you get up closer to Long Pond, you notice, I mean, it's more wooded, there's more steep slopes, to the river. The river is sandy bottom, there's not as much choky vegetation, but between where the west reservoir turns into the river
Yeah.
again, and up past Great Western Road, north of Great Western Road, through Sand Pond Woodlands area, it's extremely choked.
Yeah.
And the town does try to go up and clear big impediments, but as Alan was stating, it's a lot of the kind of weedy growth on the sides. It's probably a lot of loosestrife.
Yeah.
You can almost not, if you're standing on the bike trail looking north, there's times you can't even see a channel. It's just green.
Yeah, right.
Right.
And not algae, like, well, that too, but vegetation.
I work in some rivers off Cape where they're just losing the river. It's just becoming wetland because they don't have the flow. And
There's a
there's no
section like
incentive to
that.
keep the herring run open. People have just forgotten about the herring run. So I think you need some kind of a, dredge machine that goes in, gets permitted, and, cleans it out. So it'd be nice to see mosquito control get involved with that, but I don't know.
What's the process? Where do you start with it, Brett?
It's a very specific type of machine, and the one we're looking at for Plymouth County is about $100,000, although we had a bid on it, or an estimate, and the vendor came back and said the cost of 40% higher now. So 140,000. So you need the machine, then you need a crew that can safely operate it, then you've got to get permits for the appropriate board to operate it. And I think almost a county-wide machine or a state machine that is lent out. Plymouth County is willing to let other places use it. They asked us to operate it, and I said I would, but only for fish run locations. I don't want to clean out someone's duck pond, and if I can use it outside of your jurisdiction. And they agreed on like a cost-sharing basis. So that model might be good for down here.
So, question, if the groundwater flow itself isn't there anymore, what good does it do to clear a path in the river? I mean, if the river's choked up partly because there isn't enough flow to clean that stuff out, and you spend a lot of time and money cleaning it out, but there's no water there, are the herring gonna be able to go upstream?
Think about the work you did recently with Phragmites in Skinnequit Brook.
Yeah.
So in a couple sessions, couple years, you've got a pathway that fish can get through that'll probably need a tune-up every year. If you do the automated work with a machine, you might gain 5 years or more, depends on the watershed. And if you care about certain aquatic resources like a herring run, I think you just have to commit to that. And it won't be, if you really do it well, you're gonna get a bunch of years where you don't have to go back right away. And so that, I would recommend it's worth it. This is the biggest herring run in the state for the last 5 years. So I think you commit to that, and you just realize that you're gonna have to get out there. If we bring herring back to Grassy Pond, same thing. You'll need some kind of a machine
Need
to
to dig
grub
that
out
out, yeah.
that channel. And what I'm finding in a lot of communities, people are just forgetting about it. And we've had a harvest ban for 15 years, and people are not thinking about the herring runs anymore. So you're just not seeing that committed resource. Other places, they do a good job. So it's kind of a broader discussion on how you want your rivers to look. I think some of these species, these wetland plants, in lower flow situations they'll alter, they'll re-engineer the stream channel. And then you'll just have a diffuse, broken up wetland area as opposed to a stream.
Well, I'd like to do whatever I can as a board member. That's part of my reason why I got on this board, is to try to have something for a legacy going down the road. I don't want to be known as the guy that didn't do anything, and the river's gone. So, I just know the history of it, and I like to, I think we can create articles. We do it by February, right? We could go and ask for these kind of machines, or go out to bid as a group. It would be something that would be a nice plan to do, in my opinion. You know, I don't know what everybody else feels, but I think it's worth the work.
Are there properties that are owned by HCT that would benefit from this kind of a machine too? I wonder if they've got more funding than other areas that they might be willing to commit.
I mean, they own property on the river as well.
Yeah.
So my opinion is that in the town of Harwich, there has not been a lot of focus on freshwater resources. And you're talking about something that I am not aware of, but I am very aware of freshwater ponds being badly corrupted. And the focus has been on the tidal resources and nutrient pollution of the tidal resources. Same sort of thing is going on in freshwater ponds like Skinnequit Pond and elsewhere. And there isn't like a focus advocacy effort in the town of Harwich to bring some attention to those issues. And what I'm talking about is not directly related to what you're talking about, but it's still all the freshwater resources. And the issues with the freshwater resources have lacked focus in the last decade. I mean, I'm not familiar with the history in town except very vaguely before that. I know that in the aughts, there was a more of a focus on freshwater issues here, and I don't think there has been recently. So I think it's a thing to think about, how to advocate for all these things to try to ensure that we preserve what we have and improve it.
To that point, I mean, a lot of other towns have these pond groups or freshwater, advocacy boards. They're advisory, but they do a lot of the work and the legwork, and then they make proposals to a board of selectmen for what should be done. So that might not be a bad route, is trying to approach the town, because, I mean, it's not just about the Herring River, it's not just about Skinnequit Pond, it's about all the freshwater resources that we have. So it's certainly much more than this group, myself, that we can all take on. But if there was, maybe it's a conversation to have with either our liaison or administration about creation, because ultimately selectmen create groups, but maybe that's an idea, John, is to create a new water quality task force or something.
Well, so there used to be a thing called a water quality task force.
That's why I said it.
in Harwich. But that's one thing within the purview of the town government. The other approach, and they're not mutually exclusive, is just citizens who aren't waiting for the town government to do this, are just starting to push from the outside.
Yeah.
And it's a thought. Maybe we can talk about that, since you're looking for that sort of thing. I think, it would be a great thing to do, actually.
I think
Maybe
so.
we should talk to some of these organizations in the other towns and see what you have.
Yeah, and there are organizations, there are pond groups all over
Orleans.
Harwich, too.
Pond Coalition.
Yeah, I know there are. They're,
Orleans is active.
Orleans, yeah.
But a lot of focus on chemistry, alum treatments, invasive plant control. So, river channel maintenance, I'm not seeing.
Yeah.
Brewster
might be interested with Stony Brook, because
Yeah.
they have issues with the ponds in Stony Brook.
They do.
So,
Wouldn't the weeds or growth that's going on, that's an invasive species, right? In the
No,
river,
I-
you don't
I-
think that is?
I haven't seen invasive plants. I'm working with Middleborough, and they've got big invasive plants, and they rented a plant harvester this past year. And the permit process went on for a year and a half, and it was the natural heritage component that really slowed it down because of turtles.
yeah.
And they finally got a 3-day permit, and it worked really well, and they removed plants, and they want to do it again, so. But I'm not seeing, that loosestrife, I believe, swamp loosestrife, I don't even know for sure if that's what it is, but I think that's a native.
Swamp's a native, purple is an invasive.
Right, and I'm seeing, the plant I see, it sends out shoots that drop roots, or grow roots.
Yeah, that's
And-
swamp.
Yeah. and-
Purple grows straight
Right.
up, but that has crazy roots too, but the swamp
Swamp is
bends over.
native, but it's evil. It'll re-engineer a channel with lower flows, and eventually you'll just have a diffuse meandering wetland habitat. And so, yeah, I'm not seeing a lot of focus on this on the Cape, and I think some of it is because it's recent. You know, these rivers did flow stronger, you know, not too long ago.
Well, when they were managed. And I
Managed
mean
or less
managed by,
drawdown.
the cranberry bogs had a lot to do with the rivers.
They did.
And the ponds.
Their
It was
release.
all, everything. you
Their
know.
releases would scour, but I also think there was probably more groundwater go around, which means more surface water. Totally related. There's a
Several
gauge in
factors.
the Herring River, but it's pretty recent,
Mhm.
so it doesn't go back enough. When you have gauges that go back 60 years in some watersheds, you see some remarkable reductions in surface flows. So that's, I mean, we can't turn that one around too easily.
Yeah, right.
But, no, I think it's a great idea, and I'd be happy to get involved with something like that, and, you know, I'll let you know how it goes. We're trying to purchase that hydro dredge right now, but I am no expert. I have no idea if it's the exact right machine. You know, it's got a 4-inch pump on it that blows out sediment and side casts it, and then we're gonna make a custom dab it with a winch to pull out big root balls. So you're moving up the river, you're blowing out sediment, you come across a
Maybe a lot
root
of
ball,
roots.
you winch it out, and a lot of manual work. My guys are not happy about it. They're actually, they don't wanna get involved with it, cause it's just physical.
Sounds like it's very laborious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're moving, you know, 300 feet of 4-inch hose, and you're side casting it. You're permitted by the
Yeah.
Concom, you're permitted by DP. They tell you where to put it,
Yeah.
and you can't put it in one big pile, so you
No.
keep moving the hose. Someone's
So you're
gotta,
gonna carry a Woodrow up the bank?
someone's gotta move that hose. And if you can't get an excavator to do it, it's just human power, and my guys are unhappy about that.
I would imagine.
Heavy stuff.
But, we'll see.
Well, thanks for listening, because I just
No,
want to
you,
bring that
you know
No,
that,
it's
Rick.
good.
You know those
It's
changes.
helpful to have that insight,
We
because,
just start having these conversations.
Big changes, yeah.
Concept is great, but I think there's gonna be a little better system than that one.
What, the one I just described?
Yeah.
There are machines that have wheels that chew up the vegetation, but that does nothing for the sediment.
Well, and it just deposits all that stuff on the bottom, which becomes mucky and clogged anyways.
Right.
I'll have to
Gotta get it out.
I'll have to
Potentially
find,
knocks it.
at the Growers Association, a guy made a barge, he was showing it to him, and it's a barge with a scoop bucket in the front with a bunch of forks, and it went up the river,
Yep.
lifted it up, dumped it in the back, and then he went over and dumped it off on the shore. And then they also had a large sickle bar that went around circular and cut everything as they went.
Was that in Harwich? Because
No, the Cranberry Growers Association, I'll get the pamphlets and I'll share them,
Yeah.
I'll get them. for
Greg
you.
Williams said some guy had basically a truck engine on a barge, and he said, you know, it was, you know, I don't know when it was. He's not super old, but maybe 60s, 50s. And it would, someone just put this engine on it, and it would blow out the sediment and cut the plants. So there's machines out there that do it. You know, down in Florida and Gulf of Mexico, they have massive machines that do this, but they're $500,000 machines. So I think the town of Harwich has to think about it and maybe cost share with somebody, or maybe the county gets a machine that we can borrow. Maybe the Plymouth County machine will come down here, but it's hard to say.
No, certainly bears looking at and,
Yeah,
you know, taking into consideration what it could or couldn't be.
right. Water quality improves with flow, all aquatic life benefits. I've had Trout Unlimited fight me on these topics
That's just
because they
south of
think we
Great
should
West-
leave the
that's just
streams
north of
alone.
Great Western Road.
Trout Unlimited.
This guy here.
Trout
he's
Unlimited,
on
they,
the,
they,
yeah.
they don't want us to
Like
take out
Ducks Unlimited,
anything.
yeah.
one of it.
I know.
But I'm trying to-
I know.
Huh?
Great Western
Who are
Road.
they?
They're
Yeah, I can't remember
a really
his name,
powerful
but I know.
state
But look at the river.
nonprofit.
An advocacy
They
group
kick
for
my ass.
For,
hunters
Oh.
and,
Trees.
yeah,
Yeah.
or fishermen rather.
But what I've
than-
tried to
So
convince
it's-
them is if it's
Yeah.
not good for herring, it's certainly not good for trout.
Wow.
And all that sedimentation and all that plant growth won't help trout in the least.
Makes perfect sense.
But they're thinking, gotta leave it alone. And we
have
could
some
100 years ago,
data
we
on
can't
water
now.
table levels from the water department. They have lots
You know,
of
the other end of the reservoir too needs some
see over the past.
attention. I mean, Bell's Neck Road going right down through there. I mean, the silt that it washes into that pond is horrific.
Right.
You know, we had a conversation with DPW about it, oh, I don't know, a year or so ago. And,
Oh, you mean right at that low point?
in multiple places all the way down there, there's a lot of silting on both sides of the road, into the marsh as well as into the pond. what needs to happen is there needs to be some grade changes and some adjustment and accommodation for the water runoff in that whole, I don't know, probably quarter of a mile. Town engineer at the time was supposed to begin to put together a plan. We've since lost that engineer, and the issue has probably died because everybody forgot about it, but it's something that certainly needs to be looked at. It would require a little bit of time and a little bit of money, but, you know, it's very clearly a violation of everything that we talk about on a regular basis.
Yeah.
I just wonder on the top of my head, with all this federal money that's gonna be released soon, you know, if the local politicians can't get something into that, or out of that, I should say, SEER or somebody.
So they say they're gonna help out with the bridges going over the canal, but then we get all the extra people here. I don't know what we're gonna do with them.
I know.
Roads aren't big enough to move around as it is.
I think they can haul the hoses for the barge.
I hope so.
They can navigate up the river.
Yeah.
A little bit of new business if we're moving on from this
Yeah.
topic?
Before that, I actually wanted to go back to the meeting with the selectmen. I had a question, which is
The meeting with who?
the selectmen,
Oh, yes.
the annual report. And I got a request when these meetings were first being scheduled from somebody, from probably Jan, the secretary for the CPC, to verify my,
Oh, yeah.
my appointment status, basically, on both committees, since I'm just, I don't know if the selectmen are gonna ask that question, I'm just asking, is that all set?
I believe it's
What
all
was the answer?
set. I believe it's all set. I was kind of brought into that as well.
Yeah, I know.
That we don't have a date, but we have a month that you were,
But I'm not just talking about for me personally, I
Yeah.
mean, for the committee, are there any issues there? If they
no,
ask
we
us
looked
if
and
there.
made sure everyone's up to date with ethics and that everyone is legal.
Okay, all right.
And we checked your expirations and we made sure that so your CPC, your Rios, everything is okay, as far
Okay.
as I am aware,
Oh,
as
that's
of like a week ago.
Don't
good
they,
enough for me.
don't they notify you if your appointment is at risk?
There was
or
some
expiring?
confusion a while ago, and I think it's sort of a normal question. I mean, I know there was some confusion about my status for a little bit. So, that's gone, but if someone asks me that question, I want to be able to give them an informed answer as opposed to, I think so. So, I have the informed answer now, so that's fine.
Okay.
Sorry.
Not at all, not at all. So a couple minor enforcement issues, I wouldn't mind if you could ask Amy to look into them.
Yeah, hold on one second, let me get a
Yep.
piece of paper.
One, I sent you an email on, you and Ernie, and that's the Mill Road fertilizer issue on the seaward side of the fence. I sent you guys a photograph where it's a recent
Oh,
order
I know
that
where
we-
I know where it
we
is.
approved. And a lot of work's gone on the property, and I think it was a pretty good proposal, what they did. But it looks to me like they cleared some vegetation on the seaward side of the fence, which is real close to the coast, basically on the coastal bank. And there was some fertilizer put down with grass seed mix.
Yep, sorry about, I have to get to that.
No, I think just, who knows, I could be wrong, but I think just confirming that they were authorized to do that little bit of clearing, and that, is it fertilizer? And
There's
if it
one
is-
on Mill Road that was allowed to clear because it was mostly invasive, so they cleared it out, and it's dirt now,
Yeah.
and they're gonna replant it with the natives.
Yeah.
That was right next to the one we looked at
Yeah, that was
today.
right next to the one we did, but the fertilizer's up. It's not the same property, is it?
It's one property north of the new walkway proposal,
Oh, I know which one you're talking about,
and one
different.
property down
Okay,
from the
so
one
I'll
that was
check,
here.
I know it's
Yeah.
the,
Between one property seaward of the one that was here today.
I'll go take a look.
And yeah, it's a nice little, place to go visit and see what's going on. Yeah, and it could be a landscaper, a contractor that just, you know, went the extra yard to go make it look nice. But we should not, because it's right there next to the water.
Yeah,
How did you
I
spot
remember.
that?
I was out at a high tide looking at the walkway project. I just decided to
Oh,
go back out.
okay.
It was a big tide. I wanted to look at that site on a big tide.
Yeah.
So I was out there, and I saw the path, and I said, oh, is this path related to that?
Yeah,
But it's not.
no,
So that's okay.
yeah.
The second one, I was out clamming in Winchmere Harbor, and there's a float off of Snow Inn Road on the western side of the harbor that's really impacting salt marsh. It's just leaning badly. And so the question is, you know, is that contractor gonna, you know, is he gonna move it along, or is it gonna be there? Shouldn't be there at all. I've got a photograph I could show you, but I think it's worth taking a look
Can
at
you
it.
text it to me? That would be good.
It's sitting right on salt marsh, and so, yeah.
Oh, it's a big one, too.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah.
We really have tried in recent years to avoid those impacts. And there could be a window where the person is just leaving it there for a day because they can't get it off with the tide, and I would understand that.
Can I see which one it is? So they'll probably know which one it is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I know which one that is.
Snow Inn Road, it's near,
Yeah, that's a no-no.
yeah, it's a big no-no, I think.
Is it
I'll
near-
take care of it.
was Skip?
It's right near Skipper's.
It's not his, though.
Which is interesting, the Skippers, you know how that overwash bulkhead, we had concerns about the
Yeah.
potential to impact the salt marsh? It is, you know.
Well, that's his business, is to pull those things out, right?
Well, I don't know if it's Skipper or not, I don't know if he's doing that work anymore.
Oh.
So I don't wanna say it's him or not, but,
Yeah.
either way, it's a good one to ask Amy to look
Yep,
to.
I'll go take a look.
Most of us don't recall that project with Skippers where we put in an overwash bulkhead. It was a little bit controversial, and I think it was sold because it wasn't gonna impact the salt marsh, but what it does is energy pops over that, you know, it's basically fiberglass plates, and energy goes over those plates, and it's scouring out the salt marsh,
I'll
upgrading
take a
of
look
it.
while I'm there, just out of curiosity.
Yeah, it's one of those that we voted for it. Some of us were concerned about it. I think it's not helping the salt marsh. Energy goes over the plates and kind of pushes it out.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we were convinced that it would be okay. But, yeah, there's a lot to look at around Winchmere. It's a good place to look at things and think about impacts. You know, when the tides are really low, you can get a good look at things. Shellfish is way down this year in Winchmere. I'm not sure what that's all about, if it's just natural survival or just a lot of harvest. There was a lot of pandemic harvests, a lot.
Uh,
Yeah. And we might have just cropped them off,
Interesting.
yeah.
Can it recover from that kind of overfishing?
Some species can, some species not as much.
Yeah.
The seeding that's occurred in recent years, I think, has helped it. So are we cycling past all that seeding? So there's a couple of things that could be going on, but I do know that,
Seeding every year, so we shouldn't,
well, when we have more projects, there's more seeding too.
I mean, Heinz has a set amount that he does anyways. This
Right.
is just excess.
Right. But the excess lead to really good
True.
fishing for a little while. But I think that the pandemic brought people out last winter. It was amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
people were digging all around.
Well, in general, people
Yeah.
are enjoying the outside.
Well, thanks, Amy, for checking on those.
I'll check those, sorry, it's
Yep.
spilling nuts.
And if that barge, if the float is still there as it was after 3 weeks, I would advocate a discussion on
I'll
just
send a letter.
issuing it. Well, I'd rather issue a fine. I feel like we've issued letters a lot. We've kind of gone past that. I think, you know, these type of infractions, I think, should warrant an immediate fine. That's
I'll look into it prior to the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay, good. Any other issues?
Yeah, well, we're right on that side of the harbor, that culvert that dumps down there in the bottom. We had a discussion about speaking with the state or looking into all that as to, you know, that whole system that runs up 28. Is there any activity on that, or
Not that I'm aware of.
This is
and-
on Evans' property?
is there a
Yeah.
method to,
You know, I feel, who was it? Dawn kind of called me out to look into it. I was at a site today in Westport, And I need to call DOT about something similar. It's their bridge, they should fix something, it's on a herring run. And I have a pretty good contact. I think I probably should go ahead and bundle the two inquiries.
Sure.
And just say, I've got two things, can you put them on your list to look at? And
That'd be,
That would
that'd
be
be great.
helpful,
'cause, you
because I
know, mean,
don't
if
have a
there's-
good contact with them.
DOT's tough. You can get ignored, without.
I know.
But I do have a pretty good contact with the environmental division, and I think that's what I'll do is say, can you put these two on your radar to inspect and, and see what happens?
Because, I mean, if there's 1,700 feet of road that's tied into that drainage system,
Yeah.
you got a 1-inch rainfall, that's probably 30,000 gallons of water being dumped
Yeah,
out there.
the splash
Crazy.
pad isn't gonna do much that's
No.
proposed there.
Yeah, it's not, not the answer by any stretch, but it's the beginning.
It-
But I
it-
mean, I think we need to follow up on that, because that was part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, infrastructure-wise, the DOT is gonna get a lot of money from the feds, and so it could be something that they at least put on their radar.
Yep.
And then it cycles through, and we did that at 495 in Middleborough, at the Nemasket River, and it took like 5 years, but they ended up making a fix that the town didn't want to spend it. It was just millions, but they did it.
Mhm.
So I think, I'll give it a shot. I can't say if it'll work or not, but I'll try.
It's worth a run at it.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's it. We have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So
Second? All in favor?
All in favor?
Thank you.
Nice to have a few minutes to